This is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material. So, good afternoon everyone. We are the group 4 and our topic is all about contemporary global governance with the integration of COVID-19. So, first, the objectives. So at the end of the lesson, the students can first learn what is global governance. Second is understand how global governance impacts a country. And next is know how global governance is related to globalism. So, what is global governance with the integration of COVID-19 pandemic? Global governance refers to the system of decision-making and cooperation among international actors, including states, intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, and civil society. What this means is that in global governance, it helps us decide of helping a society or a country in not only the private sectors but also the public sectors to improve or to give the best result in our problem. It helps us decide to be or helps our decision to be successful, not just by implementing something that could be a harm or not good to the society or the country. It helps global governance support each other, and the institutions helps us assess and decide what is best. So global governance functions through a set of institutions, rules, and processes that aim to manage cross-border issues like diplomatic relations, trade, financial transactions, migration, and climate change. What this means is that it helps with global governance. We negotiate with other countries. It's like what happened with the pandemic recently. We all know that the vaccines, the face masks, they did not come from our country. They came from other country. And with the trades that are happening, it involves also human interaction, and it helps and cooperate other countries with all countries that involves in trades, and it helps solve the problems by countries with the lack of supplies in each of the countries. And with global governance, it helps us be prepared of what's coming or the problems that we are facing today or in the later run, because with the suggestions and the decisions of public or private sectors and the other countries, that helps us to be better in solving the other problems. So a number of examples of global governance is that managing the planet, the economy and of governance of the economy and globalization, political and institutional governance, global health governance, and peace, security, education, and information of the people. And that's all for my report.
So my topic is all about the effects of globalization on government. But first, let me discuss what is globalization. So, globalization is the word used to describe the growing interdependence of the world's economics, cultures, and populations brought about the cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. Countries have built economic partnership to facilitate these movements over many centuries. But the term gained popularity after the Cold War in the early 1990s, as these cooperative arrangements shape modern everyday life. This guide uses the term more narrowly to refer to international trade and some of the investment flows among advanced economics, mostly focusing on the United States. The wide-ranging effects of globalization are complex and politically charged, as with major technological advances, globalization benefits society as a whole while harming certain groups. Understanding the relative cost and benefits can pave the way for alleviating problems while sustaining the wider payoffs. So, how does globalization affect local governments and politics? Globalization is the way that countries and people have become more connected politically, economically, and socially. The internet has played an important role in giving people all over the world a voice. That means that local governments are impacted by globalization from the top and from the bottom. That means that local governments must take ideas and laws from global government at the top like the United Nations and domesticate them locally. And next is, how does globalization affect economic development? So, globalization has changed the role of the state politically because of strengthened interstate relationships and dependence on one another. States were created to be sovereign, but now due to globalization often give their sovereignty away to pooling in conventions, contracting, coercion, and imposition. This has led to increasingly similar jurisdictions across states and to power being seen as economic rather than political progress, because states now make political progression and regression together, causing states to become more developmental. And lastly, the impacts of globalization in financial market. So, globalization causes spending retrenchment has been called the efficiency hypothesis. In its simplest version, it stipulates that globalization reduces public expenditures because international competition effectively triggers a race for the best location across nations, which fosters tax competition and leads to expenditure retrenchment, as the more complete international integration of financial markets also penalizes deficit spending. This logic for capital mobility is that the greater potential for capital flight across borders has rendered financial market investors the ultimate arbiters of fiscal policymaking, as they effectively can punish governments by selling off government bonds. Hence, the simple version of the efficiency hypothesis predicts that the governments respond to globalization by introducing substantial cuts in public expenditures. In conclusion, globalization restrains governments by inducing increased budgetary pressure. As a consequence, governments shift their expenditures in favor of transfers and subsidies and away from capital expenditures. This expenditure shift is potentially enhanced by citizens' preferences to be compensated for the risk of globalization, or the compensation hypothesis. That's all for my report.
So, hi everyone, my name is Dr. Rodriguez Francisco, and I am tasked to discuss about the institutions that govern international relations. So let's get started. So the institutions that govern international relations are the following. Okay, the United Nations, the North Atlantic Treaty Organizations or the NATO, the European Union or the EU, the World Trade Organization or the WTO, the International Criminal Court or the ICC, no? And let's talk about each of it. So let's talk about the United Nations first. So the United Nations, UN, is a global organization that, in my perspective, works primarily to preserve human rights all over the world. Solve global concerns like poverty, hunger, and climate changes. And it's also a foster international collaborations. So through diplomacy, humanitarian aid, and development projects. its program is to seek and to build a more equitable and sustainable world. So the countries nga appeal sa UN are China, France, Argentina, Canada, Belgium, United States, Angola, Israel, Germany, Andorra, Russia, Switzerland, Union of South Africa, Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic, and of course the Philippines. So Tunisia is like a group chat for countries. So di rin nila sabutan ang mga actions nga ilang pagahimuon para sa ilang country. So dili pud sila mo ask of help, for example money. So sabutan na nila. Okay. So okay. Next is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So the North Atlantic Organization is a military alliance consisting of 30 members countries. It's primarily from the North America and Europe. So NATO's main purpose is to ensure the collective defense and the security of its member states. So it was established in 1949 during the Cold War to provide a unified defense against the potential threat of the Soviet Union and to promote the stability and cooperation in the North Atlantic region. So kani siya mura ni siya og guard or like the police or the military sa kung sa ato. So next is the European Union. This is a political and economic union of 27 European countries. The EU's primary goals are to promote economic integration, ensure peace and stability in Europe, and enhance cooperation among its member states. So next is World Trade Organization, or the WTO. So this is an international organization that focuses on the facilitating global trade and ensuring that it occurs as smoothly and as predictable as possible. So this organization, they safeguard the transactions between countries. Sila may mag-ensure na safe, good, and legal. So and lastly, the International Criminal Court, or the ICC. So this is an international tribunal established to prosecute individuals for the most serious and international crimes, including genocides, crime against humanity, war crimes, and crime of aggression. So the ICC is like a big, kumbaga siya mo'y pinakadako nga, it is kani mo'y organization nga top of the line yun, like for example, sa atuan natin judge so kani may judge sa tibok yun. For example, dako na kanya ng crime and hindi na makaya sa country, and for example, libog sila kung saan nila pag-deal, so they will go to the ICC to ask for help and guidance. So kani mo yung hatol if the person committing the crime is innocent or pasaginlan mo. So this is very important also natin ni ICC. It's because mapanatili niya nga fair ang justice system. So because kung wala mo organization that purely focuses on justice, lisod yun unfair sa ubang tao nga kasama ng tao, unfair sa mga nakasala na nahimong innocently. So I think that's all my report, and thank you.
So globalism is the development of social, cultural, technological, or economic networks that transcend national boundaries. Globalization is also a political ideology that puts interests of the world above those of individual nations. While internationalism is a movement which advocates greater economic and political cooperation among nations for the theoretical benefit of all. Internationalism teaches that the people of all nations have more in common than they do differences, and thus that nations should treat each other as equals. So differences of internationalism and globalism. So internationalism is a political, economic, and cultural cooperation between nations, while globalism is an ideology based on the belief that people, goods, and information thought to be able to cross national unfettered. So first, what is the impact of globalism? So globalism brings reorganization at the international and national and subnational levels. Specifically, it brings the reorganization of production, international trade, and the integration of financial markets. So, is globalism good or bad? So, globalization has many benefits, and some of the more important ones include globalization compromises the integration of cultures, information, technology, investment, and international trade corporations. So it acquires a competitive advantage through globalization. It helps them lower their costs of operation. So why is globalization important? So it is important because it is used by political scientists such as Joseph Nye, based of what I've searched. So he described that attempts to understand all the interconnections of the modern world and to highlight patterns that underlie them. While primarily associated with world systems, it can be used to describe other global trends. While internationalism is an important component of socialist political theory based on principle that working class people of all countries, like all countries are working together to make that process, so or make that plan to happen. So countries must unite across national boundaries and actively oppose nationalism and war in order to overthrow capitalism. Internationalism promotes peace and security, self-determination, economic stability, and humanitarianism. For example, in a world international sporting event like the Olympics, the host country will have great economic benefits because of attracting foreign investment. So how does internationalism benefit the economy? Economic benefits. The most important economic benefit of internationalism is low cost and global increase in business trade. So, conclusion, internationalism is related to firms' movement overseas, while globalization is the rapidly growing integration of communication, financial, as well as political ideology.
Nation has several roles and functions including health and education through specialized agencies like the World Health Organization and the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization or UNESCO. The United Nations addresses global health issues and promotes education and cultural exchange. World Health Organization is responsible for international public health. Its mission includes coordinating the response to health emergencies, setting international health standards, conducting research, and providing technical assistance. The countries to improve healthcare systems. WHO work spans areas like disease prevention, vaccination campaigns, and health infrastructure development. UNESCO focuses on promoting education, science, culture, and communication. It works to ensure access to quality education for all, preserve cultural heritage, and promote cultural exchange. UNESCO also supports initiatives related to media freedom, access to information, and safeguarding of all cultural diversity. Development. The United Nations works to reduce poverty, promote sustainable development, and improve living standards globally. It implements various programs and agencies dedicated to economic and social development. Human rights. Human rights promoting and protecting human rights is a core function of the United Nations. It establishes and enforces international norms and standards related to human rights, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The UN adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, setting up a comprehensive framework for the protection and promotion of human rights. Yet UDHR serves as cornerstone document and a reference point for human rights globally. The UN has developed numerous international treaties and conventions that member states can ratify to commit to upholding specific human rights principles. For example, research and data. The United Nations conducts research, collects data, and provides information on various global issues, serving as a valuable resource for governments, policymakers, and the public. Informed decision making. Governments and the policymakers rely on united research and data to make informed decisions on issues such as climate change, poverty, conflict resolution, and public health. International cooperation. United Nations data fosters international cooperation by providing a common set of facts and figures that can be used as a basis for negotiations and agreements between countries. Accountability. The United Nations holds governments and organizations accountable by monitoring progress towards international goals such as the Sustainable Development Goals and reporting on compliances. Public awareness. The United Nations research and data help raise awareness among the general public about global challenges and the need for collective action.
The United Nations has several roles and functions, including humanitarian assistance. The UN provides humanitarian aid to countries and regions affected by natural disasters, armed conflicts, and other emergencies. This assistance includes delivering food, clean water, medical supplies, and shelter to affected populations. The goal is to alleviate suffering and save lives during times of crisis. Next is environmental protection. The UN recognizes the importance of addressing global environmental issues to ensure a sustainable future. It supports international agreements and initiatives aimed at combating climate change, such as the Paris Agreement, protecting biodiversity, and promoting sustainable management of natural resources. These efforts are critical for safeguarding the planet for future generations. The next one is international law. The UN plays a significant role in the development of enforcement of international law. It helps negotiate, establish, and uphold treaties, conventions, and agreements that regulate various aspects of international relations. This includes areas like disarmament, trade, human rights, and the peaceful use of outer space and oceans. The next one is promoting democracy. The UN promotes democratic governance and the rule of law in countries around the world. It does so by supplying efforts to hold free and fair elections, strengthen democratic institutions, protect human rights, and build the capacity of governments to govern effectively. This work aims to foster stable and inclusive societies. The next one is conflict resolution. The UN is often involved in diplomatic efforts to resolve conflicts and prevent the outbreak of wars. It facilitates negotiations and peace processes, helps mediate disputes, and deploys peacekeeping missions in conflict zones to maintain peace and security. The goal is to prevent the escalation of conflicts and promote peaceful solutions to disputes. These purposes reflect the UN's commitment to maintaining international peace, promoting cooperation, and addressing global challenges through diplomacy, humanitarian assistance, legal frameworks, and other means. The UN serves as a forum for member states to work together on these issues, striving to create a more just and a secure world.
So, the challenges of global governance in 20th century. So, some of the challenges of global governance in 20th century are ethnic conflicts, infectious disease, climate change, food insecurity, and other pressing threats are increasingly threatening global security and stability, prompting doubts about the ability of the current global governance order to respond to the challenges plaguing the 21st century. The major areas of urgent concern have been climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. To take just few examples, global carbon dioxide emission from fossil fuels have grown at an average annual rate of 2% since 1990 and hit record in level in 2018. So, the 21st century has introduced many challenges, including international issues such as threat of terrorism, extremism, and climate change, or social issues like gay marriage, feminism, and civil rights concern. The two great challenges of 21st century are the battle against poverty and the management of climate change. On both, we must act strongly now and expect to continue that action over the decades. The current crisis in the financial markets and economic downturn is new and immediate. Even when the world economic growth came to a halt in 2009 because of the global financial crisis, these perturbing trends were not reversed, as the present scale of human activity was the only marginally and temporarily affected. World economic growth again took off shortly thereafter. So, the importance of sustainable development in 21st century are protecting the environment. This objective focuses on contribution by human towards protecting and enhancing the natural environment by minimizing pollution and waste, also working towards reducing global carbon footprint.
My topic is identify the challenges of global governance in 21st century. Challenges in 21st century of global governance. The Global Governance Foundation aims to promote global governance as a means of addressing the world's most pressing challenges such as climate change, overpopulation, and pandemic. There's a lot of challenges we experience right now, especially in climate change. Hotter temperatures, loss of species, and not enough of food. Climate change governance used to institute to address governance failures, strengthen incentives, and build capability for climate change actions. Also, overpopulation and overcrowding leads to further demands for limitation resources, and this is turn can lead more conflict and warfare. As a human seek out more resources, they take over land that was the habitat of other species, leading huge biodiversity loss. Although globalization has caused progress for overpopulation and overconsumption because of the increase in global awareness. And also pandemic is one of the challenges we experience in our lives. The COVID-19 pandemic is a transnational threat that requires a global response, but the outbreak has led very divergent national approaches to managing global epidemiological independence and expose broader structural weaknesses in the global governance system.
So my topic is the relevance of the state amid of globalization. So the relevance of the state is the complex or a context that globalization is a complex or multifaceted issue. On one hand, globalization has led to increased economical and cultural interconnectedness between nations, which has led some to argue that the power of the relevant state has decreased. So, if we talk about state or relevance, let know what is state. So, the state is the most universal and most powerful of all social institutions. The form of human association. It is necessary because it comes to existence out of the basic needs of life. So the state, we know the state is a necessary because it's come to the existence of the basic needs life. It's the most universal and the most powerful of social institution. So first, we know what is the difference between state and nation. So we know the nation, we know the state, so the nation. So let's talk about nation. Nation refers to the people other than any kind of formal territorial boundaries or any institution. It is a collective identity grounded in a nation or shared history and a culture. So let's talk about the nation of the Philippines. The nation of the Philippines is referred for the people, the territorial boundaries, just like a nation that shared history, culture, or just tradition. So the state is a political concept, and while the nation is a cultural concept. So the state in the Philippines is just like a government, politics, and more, etc. So this is bring us the concept that's the nation and state. So next is the state have four elements. So let's talk about the four elements of state. So state first is the population. Population that people who make state, and this is essential for state. So there is no state if there is no population or we people, because we or the people who make the state. So that's the first element. The second element is the territory. Territory, there can be state without a fixed territory. We don't know the literal meaning of territory or territory. So people need territory to live, organize themselves, especially political. States include land, water, air, space. So geographical territory. So just like land, water, and air or space. So the third is government. So the government, there's no state if there's no government, because government is the working agency of the state. So the state and government. So the government who work is the agency of the state to make it work. So that's the thing. So last is the sovereignty. So sovereignty means supreme and a final legal authority above the beyond with legal access. In sovereignty, there's a two types. Is the internal and external sovereignty. So first, internal means the state is a supreme over all citizen and association. So in meaning, internal means that the state is supreme over a citizen or association, or in just our means local because it's external. So an external means the state of independent and free from foreign or outside control. So it's free from the foreign or outside control. It's that internal or internal out for the
So that's the two. So that's the four elements: population or we people, territory, territory, the government or the agency of the state, and last is sovereignty. So conclusion is the role of the nation state on the globalization is a complex of one part due to the varying definition and shifting concept of globalization. While it has been defined in so many ways, globalization is generally recognized as the facing complete disappearance of economic, social, and cultural borders between nation and state. And that's all is the relevance of a made globalization. And all, thank you.